Class is in session. Hey everybody, and welcome to Unlearn 16. Class is in session. Today you just get me. You get me, and you get quite a bit of nostalgia, and to be honest, quite a bit of grief. A few days ago, I found out that a good friend of mine, Matt Anderson, who has been a friend of mine since grade 9. And for those of you who are doing the math, yes, that's a long, long, long time ago. And I'm trying to piece it together, and I'm trying to find sort of how to frame it, how to digest it, how to go about everything. I want to give you what and I'm frustrated, right? You sound like I can barely grab words right now, so you guys can understand how difficult of a position I must be in to not be able to speak on it. And I thought the best thing I could possibly do right now, yeah, sure, talk about my grief, but way more importantly than that, I think I need to talk about who he was, who he is, how I think he has affected the world around him. Because I think those are the important parts that sometimes we lose or we don't speak about authentically right away because we're so wrapped up in, you know, missing and losing a person that meant a whole hell of a lot. Um, I don't even know where to start. Excuse me if this is all over the place. Excuse me if it's definitely not going to be a linear podcast. It's going to be one of those ones where when it comes into my head, it just takes priority. First and foremost, I want to say this. Matt and I have known each other since we were 14 years old. That does not mean he and I spoke every day on the phone or even spoke often. Okay. We spoke through high school, a little bit afterwards, and then you kind of pick the way it works is you kind of pick it up in pieces, right? You'll bump into each other at the grocery store, or Facebook brought a lot of us back together, or whatever. TikTok, as it, would be. Um, but here's the interesting thing about Matt and my friendship. Um, I could have called Matt in any situation over the past, Jesus, 30 years. And I know if I needed him and he would have been there in an instant. And I genuinely hope he knows that about me. So I'm going to go back a little bit in time and sort of, I think I have like three things, ever the teacher, that I've sort of classified in my head as things that I want you to know about him. And not just know about him so you can know my friend and remember him and honor him, but understand who he was so we can all, myself included, emulate those amazing pieces of this man. Okay, so I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go back, way back, and I was a kid that played baseball with the boys. Right, I lived up north. I always played hardball. When I moved to Oshawa and then to Whitby, I always wanted to play hardball, like regular baseball. I didn't want to play softball. And in Oshawa, I had a bit of a setback because they basically said, "Oh, she should be playing rep, but she's a girl and there's no girls on the team. Who's she going to room with? Yada yada yada." And it was a bit of a big kind of letdown. And I shifted to Whitby, and when I shifted to Whitby, the house league, just house league, not rep, really didn't want me playing with the guys. And my mom had a bit of a fight in order to put me in that league. And as I got put in that league, I was met with some not lovely things. I don't really remember them being so overwhelming. I think I got very much used to a couple things. Number one, I had short hair and I was a back catcher. So a lot of people didn't know I was a girl right away. They kind of figured it out later. And as they figured it out, they'd already sort of established, oh, she's not a horrible baseball player. Oh my God, that's a girl. Oh my God. And they get all those rumbles. But when I went to Whitby, it was something a little bit different. So I moved in the summer before grade 9. So I hadn't started high school yet. And in this league, I was getting chirped. I was getting a lot of, I don't know, 14-year-old aggression, coach aggression about me being a girl on the team. Now, my team kind of took it because and they weren't jerks to me because they knew I could play. So the fact I could play well, like really well, allowed them to sort of, be okay with the girl being on the team. It's like in order to be a girl on a guy's team, you got to be in the top like 10% of the team or else they don't want you at all. Completely negating the fact that the other 90% of the guys are just as crappy, but nonetheless, I digress. So I started playing and very quickly I met Matt. I don't remember exactly when. It's one of those things when you lose somebody and you think, "Oh, I just wish we would have talked about reminiscing more and gone through those stories more." Because you want them firmly ingrained so that they can be forever in your mind, right? But here's what I do remember. So I was a catcher and Matt was a pitcher. All right. Now, for those of you who don't know Matt, let me paint you a bit of a picture. The kid was 6'5" and like grade 10. He was huge and he was a big guy, right? And so when he pitched and his step to the plate, it was like his left foot was on the plate, right? It was that long of a stride, but he threw like Thor. Yeah, that's right, the god of thunder. I hope if Matty's listening right now, he just understands I compared him to the god of thunder. Um, and he threw really, really, really hard. So he was one of those pitchers. He was the pitcher in the league that everybody's like, oh God, gonna have to. So guys on his team were chirping, you know, that's a girl. She's gonna be this. She's gonna be that. Whatever thing they were saying, they were on Matty's team. Matt, what didn't play on my team. And very early on, before he knew me, like knew me, he knew my name and he knew I was a good player. And at some point, this is how he chose to handle that. Now, remember, he's like 14, 15 years old. Matt was a year older than me. So remember this, he was that age, okay? He was that age and he heard all of these guys chirping the girl and he didn't join in. Number one. Number one, okay? Number two, a natural guy's response, and he'll have this response later, and I'll tell you how he had this response later, but a natural guy's response maybe would be to protect me, right? To say, she's a good player, shut up, maybe even throw down, right? Maybe even get into fisticuffs. Yeah, I use that word, fisticuffs. But that's not what he did. Matt looked at me, and this was sort of before the game or in between games. I can't even remember. We obviously weren't in the midst of playing. And he looked at me and he goes, Joe, come here. And I walked over. He goes, get behind the plate. And I said, all right. So I had my catching gear on. I got behind the plate. He just proceeded to rifle fastball after fastball after fastball at me to the point where, to be honest, I thought my left hand was going to fall off. And when we were done, I got up, I walked to him, and he turned to his team and he said something to the effect of, she can catch my fastball. Can any of you guys do the same? Because I haven't seen one of you guys play up to where I need you to be playing. And you're sitting here chirping her when all I want to do is trade about 5 of you for one of her. The guys kind of backed down, and Matty and I were friends ever since. But here's the important part of that. And here's the beauty of who he was. And I mean innately. Again, can you imagine the strength of a 15-year-old kid, a guy, not succumbing to any peer pressure and to standing up for what he knows is right? And rather than standing up for me, he showed them. He gave me space to prove how powerful I was. How I didn't need him to stand up for me. It kind of made me think of, when people say, when you have a microphone, you have a really big voice. Part of your job is to hand the mic to people who have earned it, who deserve it, who have something powerful to say rather than speak for them. That's what he did. He just handed me my mic. And to have that, I don't even know, I never really talked about it. We talked about it a bit. I want you, if you guys have a chance, one of my first podcasts was, the one where I catch a fastball, and it's with Matty. I want you to go back and watch it and get a sense of who he was and how I'm gonna talk about that podcast a little bit, but get a sense of who he was, because I think it's, I don't know, if you didn't get a chance to know him, I guess what I'm trying to do here is give you the opportunity to do so. Um, so he, in that moment, he didn't just protect me, stand up for me, stand for me. He used all of his sort of relative power to allow me to prove to everybody what I deserved, who I was, how powerful, how important, how self assured I actually was. And I don't even know, well, I know at that moment, I didn't know how important that was. When I retell the story and the more that I talk about it, the more that I recognize it's those moments, not where somebody stands up for you, but where somebody gives you the space to prove yourself because they believe that. I mean, guys, I could have taken one to the jaw and that would have been that. But he knew. He also knew that I needed to do that for me. Not just to put them in their place, but I needed to do that for me. For me. So, you know, it was just the basis of a very, very, very long friendship. Now, my second Maddie story. Let's fast forward to I think I was in grade 11 and I was dating a guy. I know, take a pause. I used to date guys in high school. I was dating a guy who was younger than me. Heaven help me. And this guy, I guess, I don't know what I was kind of a serial monogamist, shockingly enough, back then, right? I would date guys for 3 weeks, be bored, call it a day. Who knew? Well, obviously I didn't know, but I should have known. Poor guys. Anyways, this guy obviously got some hurt feelings. And when he got these hurt feelings, he decided, and without getting into detail, to spread some relatively inappropriate, false, and I guess he was trying to be as damaging to me and my reputation as he could be. So here he is going around Anderson talking. And Matt found out about it. Now, Matt didn't ask me about it. Matt Matt didn't come up to me and say, "Is it true?" Matt didn't come up to me and say, "Do you want me to do something? Is it true? Did this really happen? Because if it didn't happen, I'm going to kick his butt. But if it did happen, just let me know because then I'm just going to leave it alone." Right? Again, Matt would have been in grade 12, recognize the emotional, beautiful maturity. He didn't do that. He found out, he took a moment and went and found Chris. Yes, his name's Chris. I hope he's listening right now and he's internalizing this. He went and found Chris, had a chat with Chris, walked Chris over to me, and in front of, all God and country. I don't know. It was in the cafeteria, so it was a good audience. Matt looked him dead in his face and he said, "Apologize." Now, here's the key. He wasn't looking for whether or not whatever he was saying was true. Whether it was the truth or the lie, it didn't matter to Matt. It didn't matter what I did with a boyfriend. What mattered was this kid was trying to utilize this, fine as a falsehood, but was trying to use this to make me feel less, to make me feel embarrassed, shameful, whatever. Right? And that was his problem. That was Matt's issue with him. and I don't even know if I'm explaining this right, because a lot of guys would have been like, is he lying? Well, I'll go beat him up if he's lying. No, it wasn't about beating him up. No. It was holding him accountable, and holding him accountable in front of me and in front of that cafeteria full of students, where he had to apologize for using any information. And at that point, he obviously apologized and said he lied. But the lie didn't matter. Because it didn't matter if I did whatever he said I was doing. That wasn't the point. The point was, how dare this individual try to utilize that to shame me? You guys get how different that is and how important that is? And again, as a kid, I didn't get that. Matt still never asked if it was true. Didn't ask then, didn't ask later. We've since had a conversation about it. He never asked. He didn't care. Because the point of the story, and the point where he was standing up for me in a way that everybody should stand up for everybody. Somebody's trying to shame you. Who cares if it's true or not? Who cares what they're talking about? Their intent to utilize information to try to shame and belittle and harass because they got dumped or because they, whatever the case may be, that's what we have to stop. You know, and I think forward, like I get pushed forward to the Me Too movement. I get pushed forward to all of these people. And especially when women don't defend women, because they'll only defend them if it's not true. They'll only defend, right? Right? The whole Me Too movement, want to know why people couldn't say what happened? Well, because they were so ashamed that parts of it were true, that they couldn't even foresee holding anybody accountable for abusing that power and abusing their placement in order to shame, harass, and eventually at that point kick out of the industry. We were still doing that. Hell, we still do that to women. We still do that to people. Right? Somebody tries to make somebody feel like garbage about something they have no business talking about, and we are still drawn to, did it happen or didn't happen? And Matt didn't care. I would love to say that it was just me, you know what I mean? Like, well, maybe not. That he just protected me and it was beautiful. But I'll tell you, he was that person to everybody that was around him. He was that beautiful, authentic soul that no matter what the circumstance, that kind of strength and that kind of character was clear. Crystal clear. And that's why I would love to think that I emulate some of that. Because what he did and how he did it was incredibly beautiful, which is why I want to do this podcast. Because I want everybody to understand who he was. And I also want everybody to understand, like, the ripple of who he was is sitting right in front of you. Hundreds of other people who are going to have stories and are going to say, incredible things about who he was and how he helped them and made them something. That's the important part. Would I love for him to, combat his illness, be able to overcome it? Sure. Absolutely. Of course. 49 years old. It's tragic. It feels tragic. It feels overwhelming. It feels... there's a level of anger and a level of injustice that it makes you feel. He had a wife of 11 years, his niece that he took care of. This guy was everywhere. And so it makes you angry. And to avoid being too angry, because that doesn't serve anybody, I come back to how many people in his 49 years did he change? How many people did Matt Anderson help grow past, like, and feel stronger and feel more empowered? How many people's lives did he change? Because that, as much as I hate him not being here, that is still the power he has. That is still the power that is rippling from his existence. His 49 years should have been 49 more, but his 49 years, what he was able to accomplish and the people he was able to impact and he was able to love and loved him, I don't even know if, well, I can't measure it. Now, all of this, in high school goes on, and then we all go away to university and we kind of part ways. And we just keep in touch every now and then, a text message, a Facebook message, whatever. And when I started this podcast a few years ago, Matt was on this incredible journey, and I think he saw my TikTok again, like this thing that just sort of reconnected us. He followed me, we got each other's numbers again, back and forth, back and forth. I said, Matt, he started talking to me about what he was doing. And Matt, for a very long time, had been battling diabetes and health concerns. He was a big guy and he understood that his weight played a part in that. And he came and sat for an hour. And please, again, it's the one where I catch the fastball. It's like my third podcast. If you go way back to the beginning, I'll put everything in the comments. The one where I catch the fastball. Anyways, he came on this podcast and he talked about basically his comeback. And I don't mean he ever went anywhere. I just mean he got to a place where he started understanding his health and understanding what he needed to do to take control of it and how important it was. And if you saw, I want you to go to his TikTok page. I want you to go to his Instagram. I want you guys to go, and I'm going to put it all down here. I want you to go and get a feel for who he was and who he is. Because again, it's rippling. Because he set his sights on eating healthy and getting healthy, both physically, emotionally, and mentally. You know how powerful that is? Do you know how hard it is for somebody that has dealt with health issues for so incredibly long, and he discusses them in that podcast, and then to make a decision where, like, nope, today's the day. This is enough. And this guy worked out. He worked hard. Every day like everything about the way that his mind worked and the way that he adjusted his mindset, and he wanted that to be inspirational. He wanted people, because he knows there are so many people in this world that have all sorts of injuries and health issues and weight issues, that it's not hopeless, it's not a lost cause. You don't just have to let it be. You can fight through it. And he did, guys. He did. And I listened to him talk about it. And probably the most impressive thing of all was the way that he spoke about his mental health journey, not just his physical, not about the diabetes, not about his weight, none of that, his mental health. And he talked inspirationally about what it is to put yourself first. Not being selfish, different, but to put yourself first, to love yourself first, to ensure that what you need in this world, you are giving to yourself in order to make yourself happy, healthy, content, in order to feel loved. To feel loved. And I think when I looked back at that podcast, that's what he was talking about. And I had gone through a lot at that point, but the 6'5", ginormous guy who always stood up for everybody so beautifully was trying to figure out how to love himself enough to love himself better. Now the optimist in me likes to think that he figured it out. Somebody said when I lost Grandma Ruby, they said, "Well, she just finished the race. She figured it out." Now it took her 97 years, but maybe Matt, maybe Matt figured it out a little quicker than the rest of us. Not that I think he should have left, and I mean his wife and his family, but maybe the body that he had and that he had to struggle with, but was enabled him, gave him the conduit, gave him the ability, gave him the choice to figure it out. Because I really do think that not only was he a beautiful person for all of us his whole life, but I think by 49, he figured it out. And he figured out that loving himself in a real, authentic, physical, emotional, and mental way was the key to everything that matters. So, please, go listen to him. Listen to the podcast. Listen to his TikTok, his Instagram, if you can. There's also a GoFundMe for his family to help pay for funeral expenses and all that. I'm going to put all of that in the description section for the GoFundMe for Matt Anderson. I'm sure you can look up GoFundMe and type in Matt Anderson, but I'll put the link down here. But go watch all of that, and then take a breath. And I want all of us to figure out what we have to do next and what we still have to do in order to figure out how to love ourselves better, in order to understand this world better. Matty, you will be incredibly missed, but I have no doubt that the ripple effect you cause will change this world and change me forever. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. I'll see you next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. Guys, go outside and have a catch with somebody. Have a good night. Dismissed.